So everybody tell Marc hello.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet everyone. I know that you're all on the other side of the screens. Shantae invited me to be here for a few minutes and just talk about my experience with the Accelerator program. I started the program in April of 2023, and I finished the program in September 2023. As you all know, right, the program is self-paced. You can, work as fast as you can. I actually was able to manage doing the program and like moving ahead at a pretty good clip while also finishing my time as a teacher. So I was a high school Spanish teacher from 2013 through 2023. And again, right, those last like 2 months of the school year, I was like, okay, some things need to change. And I was applying for instructional design roles early in 2023. I knew that was kind of like the path that I wanted, but I really wasn't getting any traction when applying without a portfolio, right? So then I was like, okay, like how do I get a portfolio? And like there's courses that I can take. Great. What course do I want to do? The reason that I picked the Accelerator program out of the 4 or 5 that I looked at was that the way that just like the website even was structured and organized just really spoke to me as a teacher. It just made sense to my teacher brain. And so I got a lot of confidence from that. And I also really appreciated that the program didn't just focus on your portfolio, right? It really takes you from, okay, you've done no instructional design work at all. It doesn't assume anything. And then it really gives you all those skills from the foundation on up. So anyway, that's why I picked it. In terms of like what I really enjoyed about it, the storyline and the Rise modules, like so towards the end, right? Like seeing all the pieces come together, seeing my portfolio come together, seeing just like how I was growing in my skill set and my confidence. That was really valuable for me and fun. The other thing I would say is just, we're talking about feedback a little bit, like the feedback that I got from Shantae and her team, it was very actionable. It was very encouraging. And they were always really good about, hey, like if I had a question, they would take the time to answer. Also, if you've been on the Facebook group already, same thing, right? Like I had a lot of questions. I still have questions, but I always felt very supported and valued. And I always felt like, yes, like I too can do this. And like, regardless of what path you choose forward, like you can do this. If you think that teaching isn't for you anymore, you have incredibly valuable skills, and like you can find a way into a different career if that's what you want. I think for me, what I really kind of wanted in the end was to find a career path that gave me both like the routine and the structure that I found in teaching, with also the novelty and like the learning new things that I really wasn't quite getting with teaching. I was doing the same courses for like 5 or 6 years in a row by the end. And I was like, okay, so instructional design, I think at least hits that really nice balance between there is a process, there is a procedure, there's a structure to, figuring out who your audience is, right? Talking to those subject matter experts, asking the questions, getting their feedback, reviewing their, reviewing the work, structuring the slides, like all of that. Like, I mean, sure, like depending on the team and the project, it'll be a little different, but there's definitely like a process. And I really like just feeling like I'm getting better at that process with each time I do it. But I think the other really nice thing about instructional design specifically is that it gives you that novelty too, right? So like right now, one of the clients that I work with is a hospital in Florida. I'm in Georgia, by the way. So every couple months I fly down there. I work with their operating room team for 2 or 3 days. And again, right, like I'm learning and working with surgical robots and, like developing all these procedures for them. And like, it's just like a nice feeling of like, hey, like the packaging of info that I can help them with, and like the knowledge check questions that I can help them craft and all this is like, I can see that it's having a positive impact on their training. And I feel really valued, and that's really nice. The other thing that I do right now as a subcontractor is I work for an instructional design firm. Actually, Shantae helped me get into this position. So thank you, Shantae. And working there, I've been writing playbooks. So in one of the modules of the Accelerator course, you actually create facilitator guides and instructor guides. And again, in the moment, I was like, okay, but this doesn't seem like instructional design with the modules where you're clicking through and seeing all this stuff. And again, right, like I did not think when I was doing the course that part would help me, but it absolutely has, right? It's still instructional design work, and I'm not working with storyline for that particular client. But again, right, my ability to take the info, put it together, ask them for feedback, make sure that we're all on the same page, keeping the target audience in mind as I'm crafting, the playbook or the modules or whatever, has been really valuable. And again, like Shantae and her course and her team are really who helped me kind of have that focus for every project, if that makes sense. Shantae, how am I doing on time?
You're doing great, but I have to ask the chat. I have to ask our community a question. Based on everything that you are hearing Marc describe, what level or what experience level does Marc sound like as an instructional designer? I mean, how long have you been out of the classroom?
June of last year. Literally, okay. Yeah, like a year.
So you left teaching a year ago?
Yes. So I finished your course in September. And then I started working for the hospital in November. And again, like for me, it was one of those where I had a connection. I put myself in front of, a team of people. And I said, listen, like these are the modules that I've done in your course, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is what I've done. And I think that if I take this and I do it for what you need to teach people to do, this is how it would add value. And so at first it was, well, Marc, we'll give you a try. We'll see what happens. But I'm now on module like 7 or 8, and I have like 5 that I'm currently working on right now.
Amazing.
So you have to just start. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is you just have to get out of your own way and just like start, and you're going to get better. Yeah.
Well, the reason that I asked that question, Marc, is because you talk like an instructional designer, right? You talk like someone who's got a lot of experience in instructional design. So even a couple of people over here put like confident and experience, by the length of time. Yes, definitely entry level, but the way that you're holding a conversation about instructional design and the things that you're doing sounds like a very experienced instructional designer. So awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do feel like I built the skills from teaching in the classroom, and then I've transferred them over, and of course, like learn new skills too. But if I may, real quick, like one thing that was crazy for me, and I think Shantae, you and I have talked about this, is when I went to the hospital. One of the first things I did was I said, hey, like show me some of the training that you currently have right now, and they showed me a slide of objectives. And every single of the 4 or 5 objectives they had was describe this, describe this, describe this. And I was like, okay, hang on. Like these are people working in an operating room setting. You want them to be able to do more than just talk about it, right? Like you want them to be able to locate this thing. And so it was like a small thing. But I told them, hey, do you have a map of the OR, the operating room, right? And do you have a picture of the things that you want people to locate? And just like having that conversation, right? By the end, they were like, oh my gosh, this doesn't align with our module, so we should take this out. I was like, great, learning has occurred. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So you've got 5 more modules that you have to do. So you still have some time with this contract.
Yeah, it's one of those where currently it's not really contract for them. I'm an authorized vendor there. So it's more like, in my visits, I also make a point of like selling my work, right? And like the first visit was, okay, just the operating room team. And then I've kind of started branching out to like cardiology and all this, because I ask the nurses, hey, can you also like talk about my work? And like, then they start talking. And every time I go since then, it's been, hey, Marc, like we're in anesthesia. Can you also help us here, right? We've heard really good things about your modules. And so it is a little bit of like generating your own business. But for the other work I do, Currently, yes, there's going to be one more playbook or maybe one or two more playbooks. But yeah, and I think another thing too, Shantae, that I've learned is just like not assuming things and just asking questions up front. So even just last week, without going into specifics, someone said, "Hey, Marc, we want you to work with these two people on this playbook," and I did, and it was fine. And then there was some. There were just like some changing of roles in the company. And so I just asked, listen, moving forward, will these people be my subject matter experts? And they said, oh, we're so glad you asked that. No, you're actually going to be working with two other people. But they wouldn't have told me that if I hadn't been very upfront and asked, right? And so again, just like don't assume things, ask the questions. You are a professional, you have value to add. And I think I did not feel towards the end as a professional always in the classroom, which is one of the reasons why I chose to leave. But I got to say, like, since working as an instructional designer, I do feel like, I'm not a medical professional, right? I am not a leadership consultant. But they definitely defer to me because I'm the expert in the education and like instructional design space, right? And like that's just like a nice confidence boost. And I think at first I was just kind of shocked because I'd only been doing it for like a month or so. But now it's like, yeah, like I do know what I'm doing, So
you know more than everybody else there when it comes to like, how do you structure content? And that's part of what we've got to rely on is like, we become experts in the instructional design side of things. They're experts in their topics, but ID is our topic. So,
right. Yeah. And it's like, things, I think, like speaking to a lot of teachers here, right? Like, I think that one of the most important things I could share with you is that things that you and I take for granted because of our teaching background, like those are not common skill sets. People do not think or approach problems the way teachers do. We're surrounded by teachers, so we think, oh, like everyone thinks this way. No. And when I started talking to other people, I was like, oh my gosh, like my perspective is actually like really important here and I can really make a difference. And it just helps, and that's what I'm trying to do is like find ways to help with the skill set that I have.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us and taking the time out today, Marc. And it was just great to catch up and hear what you're doing. And I really appreciate you. So everybody send Marc some love in the chat, and Marc, we'll catch up soon. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks. Bye, everyone.